How does a world say goodbye to a monarch who reigned for over 70 years? How do generations measure the end of an era that began before most of us were born? Queen Elizabeth II wasn't just the face of Britain. She was Britain, a symbol of continuity through war, peace, scandal, and celebration. But in September 2022, that symbol fell silent forever. Millions around the globe watched with bated breath as news broke from Balmoral Castle. The Queen, who just days earlier had formally appointed her 15th Prime Minister, was now gravely ill. The royal family rushed to her side, and before the day ended, the unimaginable became reality. Queen Elizabeth II had died. Her death was sudden to the world, yet perhaps not surprising to those closest to her. What followed was a tidal wave of mourning, unlike anything seen since the death of Princess Diana. But behind the public grief lay questions that few dared to voice. What really happened during those final hours at Balmoral? Why was the tone of the official announcement so carefully measured? And what does her death mean for the monarchy and for Britain itself? This wasn't just the passing of a queen, it was the end of an age, an epoch marked by dignity, reserve, and the ever-steady presence of a woman who quietly held together a fracturing world. How do you replace a figure who has been there for every major global shift since World War II? In this documentary, we uncover the final chapter of Queen Elizabeth II's extraordinary life, from the subtle signs of decline to the seismic moment the crown passed to her son, Charles. We dive into the whispers, the rituals, and the historical weight of the Queen's passing. Let's unravel the layers of loss, legacy, and power behind the passing of Britain's longest reigning monarch. In the weeks leading up to her death, subtle but unmistakable signs suggested that Queen Elizabeth II's health was in quiet decline. At 96, she had significantly scaled back her public duties, relying more and more on Charles and other senior royals. Still, when she met with Prime Minister Liz Truss just 2 days before her death, the world was caught off guard. Her hands, marked and frail, set off a ripple of concern online. But few believed the end was so close. Balmoral Castle, nestled in the Scottish Highlands, had always been the Queen's sanctuary. She found solace there, far from London's bustle and palace protocol. In interviews over the years, she called it the one place she felt she could truly breathe. That it became her final resting place was fitting, poetic even. The morning of September 8, 2022, brought an unusual and unnerving message from Buckingham Palace. "Doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health," it read. Sparse in detail, the statement sent shockwaves through the press. Journalists scrambled. Cameras pivoted to Balmoral. Senior royals were said to be on their way. The reality was unspoken but clear. Prince Charles, Camilla, Princess Anne, and later Prince William arrived swiftly. Prince Harry, caught in transit, would arrive too late. The royal family had been summoned for what they knew could be their final moments together. And as they gathered inside the stone walls of Balmoral, the world outside stood still. The machinery of monarchy, always in waiting, roared to life. Operation London Bridge, the meticulously crafted plan for the Queen's passing, was activated. But because she died in Scotland, Operation Unicorn, a contingency plan, was also triggered. Officials mobilized with precision. Highways closed, security ramped up. A monarch had passed and now tradition would take the lead. At exactly 6:30 p.m., the confirmation came. The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The words were direct, dignified, and unembellished, just like Elizabeth herself. The official notice was posted on the palace gates, while black-clad anchors across Britain solemnly echoed the news. No cameras captured her final breath. No doctors held press conferences. There was no chaos, only calm, grace, and silence. In that moment, the monarchy lost its matriarch, Britain lost its symbol, and the world lost a piece of continuity, someone who had been part of the public consciousness for nearly a century. As dusk fell across the UK, impromptu gatherings began. Flowers piled outside royal residences, candles flickered, strangers embraced in shared sorrow. Across the globe, leaders issued statements, bells tolled, church services were hastily arranged. The Queen's death marked not just a personal loss, but the closing of a vast chapter in world history. She had seen it all: World War II, the fall of empires, the birth of the internet, and the tumult of modern monarchy, and she had remained stoic, steady, and consistent. In her final days, Elizabeth did not falter. She fulfilled her duties until the very end. From appointing her 15th prime minister to ensuring her death occurred with dignity, she embodied a lifetime of responsibility in her final breath. Her last public act was one of service. Her final setting was one of peace, and her departure, quiet, respectful, and unwavering, was the perfect close to a reign defined by composure and strength. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when the heartbeat of a nation stopped. Inside Balmoral Castle, surrounded by pine forests and the quiet hush of the Scottish Highlands, Queen Elizabeth II slipped away from this world. There were no cameras, no flashing lights, only silence, broken by soft footsteps and quiet prayers. The Queen died at approximately 3:10 p.m. on September 8, 2022. Present at her bedside were her son, Prince Charles, and her daughter, Princess Anne. These were the two she had always relied upon, the heir and the anchor. The moment was deeply personal, yet it echoed with historic weight. The longest reigning monarch in British history was gone. The setting could not have been more fitting. Balmoral had been Elizabeth's sanctuary for decades. It was where she played as a child, where she walked her corgis freely, and where she mourned the death of Prince Philip. Her passing there brought her life full circle. Away from the scrutiny of Buckingham Palace, she was simply a mother, a grandmother, and a woman at peace. Shortly after her death, the castle became both a place of mourning and a fortress of coordination. Operation London Bridge transitioned from preparation to action. The Queen's death certificate would later confirm old age as the cause of death. Simple, understated, final. But to millions, it felt like the end of something far greater than just a life. It was the close of an epoch. For Prince Charles, now King Charles III, the grief was immediate, but so was the responsibility. In a matter of minutes, he was no longer just a son saying goodbye. He was the new monarch, inheriting not just a crown, but a legacy shaped over 70 years. The transition was ceremonial, but the emotion was real and overwhelming. As the announcement reached the public, the world paused. It was one of those moments that divides time, before and after. Across continents, television switched to black and white tributes. Anchors choked back tears. Social feeds slowed. In a world addicted to noise, silence rang loudest. Queen Elizabeth II had died not in spectacle, but in serenity. And that, perhaps, was her final message. Dignity, even in death. Queen Elizabeth II didn't just wear the crown, she defined it. Her reign, which spanned more than 70 years, outlasted wars, prime ministers, empires, and ideologies. Through decades of political, technological, and cultural change, she remained an immovable presence, a figure of calm in a chaotic world. But what exactly is the legacy she leaves behind? To begin, there's the institutional legacy. When she ascended the throne in 1952, the British Empire was disintegrating. Countries were demanding independence, and the idea of monarchy itself felt increasingly outdated. Yet under Elizabeth's reign, the monarchy didn't just survive, it evolved. She helped transition the British Empire into the Commonwealth of Nations, a voluntary association of independent countries tied together not by conquest, but by cooperation. That shift, quiet but monumental, was one of her most important achievements. Then there's the constitutional role. She never passed laws or dictated policy, but her weekly meetings with prime ministers were a cornerstone of British governance. She advised, warned, and listened. 14 UK prime ministers served under her, from Winston Churchill to Liz Truss. That alone tells the story of her span. Though she rarely voiced opinions publicly, insiders often noted how carefully she steered conversations and shaped decisions behind closed doors, using wisdom and subtle influence rather than declarations. Culturally, she became an icon. Her image is printed on currency across the world. Her face is etched into postage stamps, tea sets, and souvenir mugs. But beyond the memorabilia, she became a symbol of continuity, tradition, and British identity itself. People may have disagreed about politics or policy, but they could agree on her. She was the common ground in a divided age. Her personal legacy is more complicated, but no less profound. She was a daughter, wife, mother, and grandmother. Critics have pointed to moments of emotional restraint, especially in the wake of Princess Diana's death in 1997. But those who knew her best describe a woman of deep loyalty, fierce privacy, and unwavering devotion to duty. Her motto was never complain, never explain, and it defined her public persona with unwavering clarity. In a modern world driven by transparency and instant expression, Elizabeth's restraint became, ironically, her strength. She offered steadiness when the world seemed to spin out of control. During the COVID-19 pandemic, her rare televised address comforted millions. She spoke of separation, sacrifice, and the hope of better days. "We will meet again," she said, a phrase borrowed from wartime Britain that instantly became iconic. And what of her legacy in terms of public trust? While institutions around the world saw declining faith, the Queen's personal approval ratings rarely wavered. In her final years, surveys consistently showed 70 to 80% of Britons viewed her favorably. An astounding figure for any public figure, especially one who never campaigned or debated publicly. Her reign also bridged a technological revolution. She sent her first email in 1976. She embraced live television. She understood that the monarchy must be visible to remain relevant. From royal walkabouts to candid documentaries, she allowed just enough access to keep the public engaged, without compromising the mystique of the crown. And yet her most enduring legacy might be emotional. To many, she was a constant, a grandmother to the nation, a living link to history. Her presence offered assurance that no matter how much change, some things would remain solid. Queen Elizabeth II did not seek celebrity. She did not chase the spotlight, but by embodying dignity, service, and resolve, she became perhaps the most admired monarch in the modern era. And in death, as in life, her legacy continues to shape the story of Britain and beyond. The moment Queen Elizabeth II died, her son Charles became king. No fanfare, no ceremony, just the ancient principle of continuity. The Queen is dead. Long live the King. And just like that, Britain entered a new era. But while the succession was automatic, the transition was anything but simple. Charles, now King Charles III, had waited longer than any heir in British history. For over 7 decades, he had prepared for this role, shaped by tradition, shadowed by scrutiny, and often caught in controversy. Now at the age of 73, the mantle of monarchy was his. He became king at a time when the public was emotionally raw, deeply reflective, and unsure of what a post-Elizabeth Britain might feel like. The days following the Queen's death were a delicate dance between mourning and monarchy. Charles walked behind his mother's coffin, greeted tearful crowds, and delivered a national address that was both personal and regal. "To my darling mama," he said, "thank you." The world watched as he balanced grief with the solemn weight of kingship. His first public speech as monarch was widely praised. He pledged lifelong service, much like his mother had done in 1947. He acknowledged the sorrow of the moment, honored Elizabeth's legacy, and set a tone of unity and stability. For many, it was a promising start to a reign long in waiting. Still, Charles inherits a kingdom and a role under intense scrutiny. The monarchy, though respected, faces questions of relevance in modern Britain. Public opinion is divided. While many admire Charles's environmental advocacy and charitable work, others remember the turbulent chapters of his personal life. His popularity has improved in recent years, but he lacks the near-universal reverence his mother commanded. One of the biggest tests for Charles will be modernization. He is expected to streamline the royal family, reduce its financial footprint, and make it more transparent. His vision of a slimmed-down monarchy is meant to reflect a more efficient institution, better aligned with 21st century values. Then there's the challenge of legacy. Can Charles uphold the respect and affection his mother enjoyed? Will the monarchy remain a unifying force or a relic of the past? But as history has shown, the crown survives by adapting. And with Queen Camilla by his side and Prince William waiting in the wings, Charles now begins his chapter. Not to replicate Elizabeth's reign, but to shape his own. Queen Elizabeth II didn't just witness history, she was history. For over 70 years, she stood as the nation's compass through change, crisis, and celebration. Her death wasn't just the loss of a monarch, it was the end of an era, the fading echo of a time that shaped the modern world. And now in her absence, Britain stands at a crossroads, looking back with reverence and forward with uncertainty. The Queen was often described as a figurehead, but that word fails to capture the subtle power she wielded. She never issued laws or signed decrees that shocked the world, but she anchored a global identity. With her signature calm demeanor, she led not by command, but by consistency. That steadiness, that reassuring presence, became more than tradition. It became emotional infrastructure for millions. Even those indifferent to royalty felt the ripple of her passing, because her reign reached beyond the gilded walls of Buckingham Palace. It reached into our collective memory, woven through wartime broadcasts, royal weddings, Christmas Day messages, and balcony waves. She was the soundtrack of the 20th century and the silhouette of the 21st. Her passing raises inevitable questions. What is the monarchy without her? Can any successor inherit not just the crown, but the public's unwavering trust? In many ways, the Queen's greatest achievement may have been maintaining the relevance of an institution many predicted would fade. And now that burden of preservation falls to Charles, and after him, William. But this isn't just about succession, it's about symbolism. Elizabeth II stood for something few leaders can claim: stability without stagnation, presence without intrusion, tradition without stubbornness. She evolved with the times, not in sweeping gestures, but in subtle adaptations, from televised coronations to iPhone photos with heads of state. She embraced change without chasing it, and maybe that's why she endured. She never asked to be queen. She never expected to be the face of a nation. But when the duty came, she accepted it, quietly, resolutely, fully. She gave her life to service, and in doing so became a global icon of grace under pressure. Now the world turns its gaze to the future. The Queen is gone, the crown remains. But the memory of her reign, the wisdom, the humor, the poise, continues to live in the hearts of those she served. She leaves behind not just a legacy, but a blueprint of strength, dignity, and unshakable duty. A model of leadership in a noisy world. So what will history say? Will Queen Elizabeth II be remembered as Britain's last truly great monarch? Or as the woman who laid the final stones in the foundation of a modern, enduring monarchy? Maybe the answer is both. And as we close this story, we invite you to reflect. What does leadership look like in your eyes? Is it charisma, command, or, as Queen Elizabeth showed us, quiet strength that never wavers? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this documentary meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dive histories. Thank you for watching.